Welcome everyone on site and online, people around the world from Australia to North America, and us gathered here together in the UK. It's wonderful to practice together. Today I will give a brief Dharma talk to get the retreat started, so to speak, give us some direction and focus. In a word, we're here to practice, but the practice must be proper. It must be genuine. We all know what it's like to practice, in a sense, wrongly and to go around in painful, pointless circles. What is it to practice properly? In this case, together. You all know from your practice, and I know well too, that almost anything can become a hindrance, an obstacle on the way. Almost anything. In a word, this is due to not practicing properly. Pain, obviously, can become a hindrance. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, the second half of the Dharma talk, Alan S. will give a brief Dharma talk addressing this very concrete, real issue of pain. But pain is not the only hindrance, problem that we encounter, is it? Pleasure can become a hindrance too, if we start dwelling in pleasurable states. Drowsiness, a kind of drugged feeling when you're just sitting there, not quite awake, not quite asleep. This can be a great hindrance. You can feel like this immense weight has been put on you and you can't seem to get free of it. I trust most of us have experienced this at one time or another. Again, almost anything can become a hindrance if we're not practicing properly. On the other hand, once we are practicing properly, once our mind, which means body, breath, and what we call mind, our total being is truly settled in the practice. Of course, in the Zazen seated posture, but also throughout the day in the activities, to be settled in the practice. The mind is no longer wavering. It's truly settled, truly calmed, truly content, able to respond, in a sense, much better than usual, but it's settled. Well, at this point, we can say nothing is really a hindrance. If there's some pain, yes, we're aware of it. We don't blot it out or try to repress it. It's there, but it's not a hindrance. It's not a problem. It's simply pain. We listen to it. Perhaps we realize we need to adjust our posture a bit, get a bit of a higher cushion, try a different posture. But the practice itself is not in any way hindered, obstructed. The pain itself becomes a kind of an opportunity to see into our practice. So again, it's very important to see through our own embodied practice that almost anything can become a hindrance. And once we really give ourselves to the practice and truly settle into that practice, really nothing is a hindrance. Even what we would normally consider a hindrance simply becomes an opportunity on the way. It doesn't really get in the way. It doesn't really hinder us. How is this? How is this? Well, concretely, through the proper practice with the body, with the breath, and with the mind itself. Starting with what we could call the simplest, relatively speaking, or the most gross, the physical body itself. Learning by doing, we find the proper practice, the proper physical posture. We have a body. We're not just floating up in the air. We have a body. There's gravity. This body is not meant just to sit for hour after hour after hour. So we need to learn, and no one can really teach us this. We have to learn through our own body. Each one of our bodies are different. But by doing it, by learning what posture works for you, how I'm sitting is called the full lotus posture. And they knew what they were doing 2,500, 3,000 years ago. There are statues that go back even older than that, that show practitioners sitting like this. But not everyone can sit like this. You don't need to, but you can see, in a sense, this is the ideal posture, with both legs like this. It can look kind of like you're wrapped up like a pretzel. It can look very unnatural, but once you get used to it, it opens up the hips. The back is naturally erect. The butt is pressed down and a little back. One simple technique is to kind of go all the way forward as far as you can and then slowly come up, and you can feel your back naturally erect. But it's very easy to do this with these legs up like this and the hips open. The breath is very good. So also, all of the legs and the butt are pressed down. You see, both knees flat. So the gravity pressing us down is spread out throughout the whole bottom of the body. If you're sitting, for example, in half lotus, you tend to be tilted to one side. Or if you're sitting with your legs crossed, both of the knees are up. But you see, this way, the weight is spread evenly. So there's not too much weight, for example, on the back. That can be a problem when you're sitting in seiza. The back or the knees can become really inflamed. But you don't have to sit like this. The point is to find the posture that is right for your body so that you can sit in sustained zazen. Sitting in a chair is possible too. You don't lean up against the back of the chair, but rather naturally sitting erect. So no one can tell you, can give a lot of guidance, a lot of suggestions, but the best way is simply to do it. Try one posture and see. So first, to get the body in order, so to speak, to find out how your body can best rest and yet be alert. We're not trying to torture ourselves, but we're sitting in a posture that allows us to be really clear, the back naturally erect, and then to be able to focus and just hold that focus. Again, this is the first point, the body. The next is the breath. Once the body is settled, it's much easier to settle the breath. Breathing, if you can, through the nose. And then just letting it all go. Breathing, using the muscles below the navel or the belly button. One of the reasons we have our hands in this formal half moon, as it's called, mudra position. You can feel it when you're breathing out. Often people get stuck in their chest. The breath seems to get stuck here. This is quite a common phenomenon. So by getting the body right and then just naturally, don't try to force it, but over time, the breath becomes slower, deeper, and longer. But if you try to push it quickly, it will have the opposite effect. You'll just get out of breath. So let it happen, but you do it by holding gently that focus, the body settled, not the thought of the breath, but the breath itself. With the body and the breath settled like that, the next point, of course, is the delicate matter of the mind. Now, how to let the mind become truly settled at rest. Alert in a way that's impossible for ordinary consciousness, but settled, calm, completely at rest. With the body settled, the breath settled and focused, then the mind, it's much easier, you see, to settle the mind. You see why the breath itself is a very helpful focus. Again, not the thought of the breath, but just the breath itself. That can be enough just to bring yourself completely into the breath. The mind wanders, simply bring it back. It's always there. It's always available. It is there. You are literally breathing, whether you think about it or not, aren't you? Sometimes you think, sometimes you don't, but you're always breathing or you're dead. So you see, it literally is prior to thought. But we get lost in thought and our breath becomes very shallow. So to simply return, not to some metaphysical principle, religious truth, but simply to return to what is always already here. You're breathing. Again, not the thought, the idea of the breath, or even trying to manipulate it, but simply being completely unified, one with that breath. The sitting itself can do this. Of course, a koan can be a tool, in a sense, to help us, almost like a magnet or an anchor to keep us really locked in rather than just wandering off into thoughts and ideas and so on. Once again, how do we actually settle the mind? First, see what needs to be done with your body. Then, give yourself gently to the breath. And then you will see what it is for the mind to already begin to settle. Well, continue, simply continue in that way. This is a very good entrance. And as I said, when the mind truly becomes settled, you'll see that all of those hindrances and obstacles, sleepiness, pain, and so on, they're not really problems at all. They're just problems if the mind starts obsessing about them and perhaps even making them worse. By trying to stay awake, you just become more sleepy, right? It takes only 1 second of inattention, and then you fall asleep. I'm supposed to be doing something. You're fighting with yourself. You're not practicing. So again, proper practice, first of all, the body, the breath, and the mind. It's quite natural. We're not trying to do something stupendous or supernatural. No. In a sense, we're just returning home, returning here. We're no longer trying to escape to get somewhere else, to get something else. But one, simply to see what is truly here. Once you see that, you don't go running off again. But to truly see, I mean, with the whole body, breath, and mind, truly see what this is. But then you don't go running away. You don't go seeking something again. But the mind must come to rest, to really know that from the inside, in our bones, so to speak. Otherwise, it's just, oh, I like that idea. I think I'll try to do that. Well, that's not practice. That's thinking about practice. So it's something that comes to be what we are. It always already is. But for us to clearly realize it, manifest it, yes, this takes some work, not because it's something difficult, but simply because our mind is so used to doing what it's doing, going around in these circles. That's what really tires us out, isn't it? It's not the practice. Sitting here like this is tiring? Are you kidding? How could this be tiring? It's not. It could never be. It's what the mind is doing when it's obstructing itself. That's where the tiredness comes from. That's where the sleepiness comes from. And in a sense, that's where the pain comes from too. It's not that you don't have any pain anymore, but the pain is no longer a problem. As you will see, Alan S. will take this up tomorrow, help to really see this concretely and in detail. Again, there's no really surefire way for you to know this except to confirm it in your own body, breath, and mind. Well, that's what we're here for. So let us make good use of this precious opportunity. You find yourself caught in your head. See it for what it is. It can be a valuable lesson to see what is your mind actually doing. Not what you want it to do or something in a book that's written about it. No, what is your mind actually doing? If you don't see that, well, how can you begin to practice? So to really see, and sometimes it can be quite humbling to see how our mind actually works. To just open up and to see that. And when you do it properly, that very mind becomes calm and settled and still. But there's no way to know this, really know it from the inside, except to confirm it completely. Body, breath, and mind. Then to forget it. But first, you have to embody it. This is the first point of practice. After the Dharma talks, there will be some time for practice-based questions. Take a moment to consider, is this a question maybe that other people may have? Often it is. So please feel free, for the benefit of all, as Rod mentioned in the introduction, to raise this question. Don't be shy. Some things you may feel, well, this is best for one-on-one, just between the two of us. No, that's fine. But many of those questions are not just your question. They're many people's questions. So for the benefit of all, feel free, again, out of the practice, to ask a question. One-on-one, when we do that, it's not to discuss this, to talk about it, to tell me how your sitting was yesterday compared with today. That has nothing to do with it. It is to manifest this fact. That's all. If you're lost, show that. Be lost. If you think you found something, show that. If you don't have any idea what you're doing, show that. There is no right answer or wrong answer. It's just a matter of being able to fully show, to be what we are at that moment. This is the beginning of one-on-one.